we're really lucky to have Amir and Morgan here with us today. So I want to welcome everyone to WiST Presents, How I Got Into Sports Tech. I'm a volunteer for Women in Sports Tech, and I'm excited for everyone to join us alongside Amir and Morgan. For those of you who might be unfamiliar with WiST, Women in Sports Tech is a nonprofit created to drive growth opportunities for women at all stages of their careers throughout the sports tech and innovation space. Through our community, we're uniting men and women to create a more successful and equitable industry. Today's webinar, WiST Presents How I Got Into Sports Tech, was created to provide a platform for discovery and discussion. We're all excited about sports returning, and we're gonna speak about that with both Amir and Morgan, who is at MLSE, and she has some exciting things to share with us about sports returning as well. And we're very excited to have our first male ally joining us today, and to have leaders like Amir in the sports tech space who support WiST's mission. So with that, I will introduce Morgan and Amir. Morgan is a manager of strategy in the Global Partnerships Group at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Her responsibilities include building and measuring marketing partnerships to deliver on brand and team objectives for the Toronto Raptors, shameless 2019 NBA championship plug, the Toronto Leafs, unfortunate loss last night. I'm sorry, I keep having to mention it. Toronto FC and Toronto Argonauts, as well as their supporting minor league affiliates. She leads a team focusing on developing strategic communication plans and creative for both prospective and existing partners, and has built award-winning campaigns with global brands including Hellmann's, Snickers, Tangerine, Coke, Wonder Bread, and more. Prior to joining MLSE, Morgan worked at two of Canada's leading PR and traditional advertising agencies, leading strategy and analytics teams, where she worked in a similar capacity on many of the country's favorite brands. Amir is the president and co-founder of Zoomph, the leading partnerships and audience analysis AI platform for esports and sports teams, leagues, agencies, and brands supporting some of the industry's best, like the NBA, NASCAR, 100T, and Wasserman. Amir is also a new member of Women in Sports Tech's board, so we're really lucky to have him both here today and on the board. And outside of work, Amir is a recovering sneakerhead, drone crasher, and can change diapers while destroying you in Call of Duty. So those are definitely impressive accomplishments there.
It's tough, but I'm very talented.
Definitely.
But excited to be here with you and excited to be here with Morgan. I'm excited for a great conversation.
Awesome. So I guess let's jump right into the questions. Just to give our audience a little bit of a sense of, I think a lot of people want to know what it's like to work in sports tech, and you guys both have different experiences and roles in the space. So what's a typical day like in each of your jobs?
Morgan, after you.
Sure. That's always the hardest question, because I feel like there's never any consistent day, and anyone who works in sports knows the craziness that happens. I think because we're up late, we're working games sort of 24/7 now between all of our different leagues. A lot of it is catching up in the morning, making sure that we're looking at what happened the night before, that all of our partnerships were executed properly, if anything needs to pivot, that we're communicating across teams and looking ahead to what needs to get done for the day. After that, it's really anything goes. We might have calls with players, we might have calls with our front office, team brainstorms, which are very interesting over Zoom these days, definitely starting to use the whiteboard feature. Building new prospecting materials, getting the team together to talk about internal corporate projects, things like Black Lives Matter, how are we supporting and looking at across our team and externally. It can be really anything, over to site visits. Last night, we were all on site at our drive-in kicking it off. So it's one of the best parts about our job is that every day is a little bit different, but most of it would be spent planning, things that are upcoming, working in a strategy position. It's all about what's next, what just happened, how are we making sense of it, and what are we going to do from here. So our team is really integrated, being a strategy team across the board in everything from ideation on prospecting new partners over to executing our current partnerships. And a lot of that is just constantly staying on top of the news, finding inspiration from other teams, and conveying it to make sure that the correct stakeholders are at the table. And a lot of that is just facilitating meetings and capturing coming out of those to present over to various parties at MLSE. Very loose answer. Apologies on that.
It's funny how similar, it is, just, working in an environment, in sports as well. So, I mean, a lot of my day is very similar to yours, Morgan, where we're just, there's no set day, right? Especially, I mean, it's 2022, right? Like there's no set anything in this year, but, it's the same thing. I sort of look at my role as, I'm here for the team and my job is to move mountains out of their way. So any obstacles that come up, I'm just always trying to think ahead so that my team can work and act without having, whatever way it is facilitating, whether it's providing them documentation that they need that frequently come up. But on our side, we're more of a platform that works with sports teams, leagues, as you guys heard in the bio there. So we're always just looking, understanding what's going on in the industry, understanding what's happening the night before. It's very similar stuff, thinking of strategy, prospecting. But at the end of the day, if I could sum it up, is just really be there for the team for whatever problem, whatever obstacle comes in, just looking forward, thinking, and then just making sure it fits with our culture and strategy.
Definitely. And I can, as you know, for my role in sports, I can definitely say that no day is the same and it's really just what gets thrown at you that day. So that's always exciting. So now I have a question for both of you about how sponsorships and activations are changing during these times. What are some of the best sponsorships and activations that you've seen during COVID, and how do you see the space changing as a result of the pandemic? One of the more interesting things that I've seen you tweet, Amir, is that sports teams and companies need to start thinking like media companies and not like event companies or people who put on events. And I know that we're going to speak about MLSE's new drive-in a little bit later, but even so, I think that is feels less of like an event planning thing and more of a media thought out event. So I would love to hear both of your insights here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were just talking about that campaign, and it's amazing the technology that goes in. I won't steal your thunder from that, but just all of this is just there's so many ways of looking at how right now, like just first and foremost, how do you reach fans, right? Digital. They're not coming into the stadiums, and so it's just looking at the content and looking at how can we target content, how can we personalize it, how do we create content that weaves the partners in organically, like, if it just fits right. I know you have a question on, one of the fan questions that kind of comes in, or one of the attendees was just around, what's that kind of right ratio between branded and unbranded? And I think it's like, if you have really good content, people are not going to really point that out and notice it. And that's a difficult question, difficult challenge to kind of resolve there. But it's just bundling and unbundling of the different platforms that you have, and understanding that social media is a distribution channel, right? It's much like a phone, right? It's the same kind of technology. Like you're not gonna, I know I'm kind of going off script here, but like the whole TikTok thing that's going on right now, a lot of people are dismayed by everything that's going on. These are not places where you want to build your castles or build your home, right? These are distribution channels. So it's creating the great content of engaging your fans where they are at those different platforms and bringing them into your own properties that you have. And I hope that kind of made sense. But what I loved about the campaign that Morgan, and MLSE and what they're doing, it was for a great cause, right? Is that right, Morgan?
Yeah, you're talking about bringing Toronto back to its feet? Or
I think the drive-in was related to the MLSE Foundation, and like some of the proceeds were going to that, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's been a work over the last little while. I think when COVID first hit, we saw some great examples around the world. Obviously, the European football leagues are a bit ahead of us, so we've looked to them as a great example for inspiration for what we can think about as sort of where Canada was heading within the COVID journey and our government restrictions. And drive-ins were one of the first things that stood out to us as a safe way to give fans a way to connect and watch their favorite sports teams in real life. We're lucky in Toronto to have a relationship with Live Nation as well. So the benefit of having us all work together is that we're able to build a drive experience that brings together Leafs and Raptors playoffs and soon TFC with our Live Nation concert series as well. So there were a number of drive-ins being built around the city. They can showcase, limited concert series or traditional movie formats, but the real unique experience we thought for fans would be able to provide that playoff sports experience with those concerts, and we've seen great pickup. It's obviously taken us a little while to get it off the ground, but we've released it this week, and tickets are selling really quickly. As Amir said, $25 for a ticket for us was really just more so about making sure that people showed up, that they secured their ticket and were actually going to come down to the venue, not decide to stay home. And all those proceeds are going over to MLSE Foundation because it's going to give us a way to drive back to continuing with sport. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges with growing the game in your own community in this landscape. So it's been super successful. We're launching tonight with our first public viewing of the Leafs game. So hopefully we have a further journey to go with them, but we'll be showcasing all of our Toronto Raptors playoffs there, as well as a Live Nation concert series. So more to come on that.
And
Definitely.
what I love about that is sorry, I just want to add a little bit more there, Sydney. But what I love about that is, like, sports is not just the product there, right? It's the platform and why all these people are coming together. We were talking about Leaf fandom. I know, Sydney's an Islander fan, and it's like the relationship that people have with these brands, is stronger than the relationship that a lot of people have with their religion. I mean, people are getting tattoos. They identify with this. And there's so many opportunities to really navigate and engage these in different groups. Not one fan base is homogeneous, right? There's all different reasons why people come together to watch. We were talking about, some of the Maple Leafs game, maybe more of a business attire. Sometimes that's why people show up. Sometimes it's an HR play where people are bringing their customers together to that. And sometimes it's a family affair, right? I can, hashtag the last standing. I would always watch on WGN the Chicago Bulls with my family there. So it's amazing how many different ways people come connect under this specific platform. And there's all different ways to sort of engage and interact. And I feel like digital provides that ability to navigate and engage in different ways on these different channels.
Definitely. And what I was going to say was, last year with Jurassic Park, we saw that with the Raptors. And so it's really, I think it's awesome that MLSE is able to kind of recreate this despite COVID, kind of have a place where people can watch the game together. So that's really awesome to hear about. So now I guess we kind of covered some of the MLSE and Live Nation things, so we can kind of pivot over to our next question. So Morgan, I have a quick question for you about how your work changes on whether you're working on sponsorships for the Raptors, the Leafs, Toronto FC, the Argonauts. I think that's really fascinating because, as Amir just said, and as we know, it is a different crowd that you're probably targeting and a very different strategy based on that. And that's something that has to do with using analytics, utilizing tools that help you get more in touch with the fan base. So that would be great for our audience to hear about.
Yeah, I think anyone who's followed any of our teams in Toronto knows anecdotally just how different our fan bases are. I think Amir alluded earlier to that sort of white, older, male, wealthy Leafs fan that everyone thinks of versus the young, urban, multicultural Raptors fan that we're starting to see when you look at, even Jurassic Park versus Maple Leaf Square on opposing game nights. You'll see very different types of people. And the same applies over to our other two properties. They're all extremely different fan bases. And when we use our data to look across the board, it's not a ton of overlap between them. We're seeing a lot more now that with the Raptors gaining in popularity, but traditionally they've all been quite different. And one thing that we like to stay on top of, and I would say our job as strategists are within the company, is it's our job to represent the fans and understand exactly who they are, exactly what they want, at all times understand how they're consuming media, all that digital and social that Amir just talked about, making sure that we understand and we're creating more of that for them and encouraging our partners to come on board to help us increase that experience. So At the heart of everything we do is understanding exactly who those fans are and what they want. It's also about understanding the culture of each of those leagues individually. So our team is divided up into sort of understanding and expertise in each of the leagues and understanding, what's relevant to an NBA fan and making sure that we're creating with our partners in that space beyond even just what we're seeing specific to our Raptors audience. And making sure that everything that we do is actually going to deliver those results. So we use a number of different tools, obviously, in the background, but everything from doing surveys multiple times a year through across Canada, comparing our fans to other average people out there, or looking at the ways that different even properties in Canada are competing with ours. We use all of those and we layer them in with insights across all of the different categories that we work within, especially when we're going out to prospect new partners, to understand exactly what it looks like in a Raptors fan's mind when they go out to get a Subway sandwich. Is that something that they're like, is there room for us to grow? Is there affinity there already? And what's the interaction like between those brands and our fans' mind? All the way over to our current partnerships, and how are we making sure that we're measuring and looking at each property's performance on social media, on digital, within the arena. What did the experience look like? Back in the day when I was an intern at MLSE, Nettle will remember this, we used to do handheld surveys where we would send out people with what looked like a Palm Pilot, and they would wander the hallways at our games, and they would just catch people on the fly, ask them what their night was like. And it was so interesting to see what the different fan experiences look like. On one night, it might be that a Raptors fan has an issue with a bathroom that entirely changes the survey response, over to what the experience might look like at a Leafs game for someone sitting in the 100s that's being hosted there by a business. So it's something that's really important for us. It's something that we leverage. All of that data is really, really important to our partners. More than ever, we're looking at data strategies and all of our digital platforms. We've, over the past year, hired a new chief technology and digital officer who's brought a huge army of people behind him. We've put so much effort into our apps. We build with Leafs and Raptors. We've got the #1 apps for engagement in both the NBA and the NHL. So we're really proud of that. And how we engage our fans has led us to things like we brought in our own 8-bit gaming team. They can build everything from the initial concept through to the actual execution. So, thinking about what those new opportunities are going to be for partners at all times, but really always rooted in what the fan wants versus trying to give them something that they're not going to care about. Is really, really important for us, and making sure that each person is building appropriately for each of our different properties.
Yeah, definitely. And one really interesting thing, I think, especially that applies with the Raptors for you guys, is that with the Raptors, you're actually looking at a fan base that's usually all of Canada. And so you get to extend beyond just the greater Toronto area. And so I think that's really fascinating, because it's also like the country's united over something, but also many people don't realize just how different the Toronto area is from other places in Canada, like, I don't know, Saskatchewan. You guys don't have to deal with that for the Leafs, but it's very interesting. It would almost be like if there was, obviously on a smaller scale, an NBA team that is applying to Oklahoma and also to New York. So that's super fascinating and probably presents challenges, but opportunities as well.
Definitely. And one of our actual misconceptions is that the Leafs are all in Toronto. When we look across the country, they are still the #1 hockey team, no matter what market you're looking at. There are fans. So obviously Toronto-centric, but we do have fans everywhere from tiny towns in Nova Scotia over to Vancouver that are still repping our team. And how do we make sure that we make them feel included? One of the benefits coming out of COVID, as Amir said, was that, the focus on social digital actually gives us a lot more opportunity to level the playing field, because nobody's down at Scotiabank Arena. We're all watching from home, and we can all share in that experience together. So the slight silver lining coming into this period is that all of our resources are really focused on that. We can really focus on any fan, no matter where they might be watching on the other side of the world or in downtown Toronto.
Definitely.
And what I loved about everything that Morgan said is it's all centered, it's all fan driven, right? And that's the oxygen that all of us in this entire Zoom chat room, right, that we all breathe, right? And it's understanding those fans and leveraging the data in privacy conscious ways, of course, like pulling all this in and understanding and targeting in different ways. it's amazing to see the diversity there, and then also understanding how much of a global impact it is. A lot of the brands that are working with a lot of these sports properties have that same connotation of like, hey, this is a localized, but that's not really the fact. It's I know a lot of NBA fans are actually in the Philippines, right? And like you're seeing just such a global presence, and it's wonderful. I think the most important thing out of all of this is how important sports is to our cultures, right? It's just the return of live sports is brought a fresh new breath of energy to everyone. But shout out to, I mean, all the staff, all of the athletes and their families that are, putting themselves, in harm's way to provide this entertainment for everyone. We appreciate what everyone is doing. I'm sure it's not easy to make those kind of decisions, but it's so valuable to everyone, and we're deeply engaged and indebted.
Definitely. And so now I have one quick last question for you, Amir, before we transfer over to a quick speed round. So Amir, as our first male ally here, what are some of the ways in which you support women in the sports tech space? And then, just as a shout out, I know that that Zoomph is hosting 2 WiST fellows this summer, and I think we have Sydney here with us today. So, and Mayer is the other one, correct? So that's awesome that you get to actually have an opportunity to mentor 2 awesome women in sports tech.
Yeah, they're absolutely 2 phenomenal people. It is. We were just actually talking yesterday to everyone, all the interns, and just love. One of the main things is just making time and engaging with students, especially women, just helping them sort of understand and navigate the industry. But it's kind of like a shame because it's just like common decency and normalcy. It's not like you're not being like nothing I'm doing is like super. It's just being normal. And it's frustrating that this is a problem and a thing, but I love engaging with students. I love interacting with them. I'm super passionate about what I do and what I love, and to have that kind of commonality and help navigate towards, and just, the women on our team, it's selfishly, you should want the most diverse team possible. I mean, that is really how you're going to win. Everyone brings a different vantage point. Everyone brings a different way of thinking. So it just makes sense. It's good for everyone, right? So it's I'm proud to be this ally and make it more normalized, if you will, to do this. But it's something it's normal, right? It's nothing outstanding. But I'm excited to be here, and I've been nothing but inspired by the entire team. The first, our ratio right now is not, where it needs to be. And that's why I first reached out, and this group brought me in: Gretchen, Netta, Mary Lou, you and Lydia, and you've helped me really understand it and really improve our practices and even host some of our jobs. And I know you guys are hosting jobs on the website too. But I think one of the other, and this is something I try to do consciously as well in meetings, it's ridiculous how many people, especially men, will talk to someone's not superior and inferior, but like someone that's lower in the hierarchy at the organization, that's the male over the woman. And so like, I hate when people do that, but just amplifying women's voices, right? And so retweeting other women when they're sharing and putting their 2 cents in, I think is really important. Something that's very easy that everyone, all these participants can easily do, and be conscious of it, right? Try to do it for 1 week, only retweet women. Just try to do that, right? And just think about every time you're about to do it and just realize it. I tried to do that for myself, and it was really astounding that it was such an action. But appreciate you guys embracing me, and I'm honored to be here.
And I think that's really awesome, because I think it's so important to like call out, we're not where we need to be regarding gender parity in our roles. Here are some things I'm trying to do, instead of saying like, yeah, we're not where we need to be, we're gonna hopefully we get there. It's not magic. It has to be, you have to be intentional, obviously, as we've seen. So I think that's really great that Zoomph is doing all these things, and just for everyone, that was a great tip of just retweeting women. If you see a female NBA analyst comment on the same thing, retweet her perspective. The male's perspective isn't any better. So I think that's definitely awesome. And now I would love to pivot to a quick speed round. So what are each of your favorite books?
After you, Morgan.
I actually have been reading a bunch of short books in COVID that I haven't had a chance to get around to. They were sort of the top shelf of my bookcase behind me. All the things on leadership, on internal Google sprints, on Disney brainstorming, Pixar. A ton of these have sort of been where my head's at lately. Also, I know they're not books, but just master classes have been sort of leading me down rabbit holes to learn more about a lot of the speakers on there. Shout out if anyone's watched the Chris Voss one on negotiation recently. That one I found really interesting. But yeah, that's been sort of my book life at the moment.
Whenever anyone asks me a question that the answer is no to is my first, I'm like, you're reading I forget the name of the book, but Chris Voss's content is phenomenal. I'm ashamed I didn't think of that. One of the books I recently read was the one that you recommended to me, Sydney, on Bob Iger and Disney and his journey, and that was phenomenal. But I'm just like you, Morgan. I'm reading to learn and consume, and I'm always trying to improve my game. Jocko Willink, he has this book called Leadership, Strategy, and Tactics. He's like an ex-Navy SEAL guy, kind of what you expect, but like it is really great team. I had our entire management team read it because it's just such a great way from all perspectives of a unit of how to work and how to think and how to act. And then just recently I finished $1 Trillion Coach by Eric Schmidt, Jonathan Rosenberg, and Alan Eagle. And it's about this guy, Bill Campbell. And one thing he did too was make sure that there was always a seat at the table for women. That was really cool of him, but really phenomenal book. He mentored like Steve Jobs and a lot of other in Silicon Valley.
Definitely, yeah. And I forget if it was an NBA player who said that Jocko Willnick's book was one of his favorites. I think I heard it on a podcast once. Maybe, I don't know, I'm going to misremember it. So I feel like it was Myers Leonard. I forget who it was.
Extreme Ownership changed my entire, everyone's like, oh, of course it changed. But like that book was phenomenal. It was really great.
Yeah, definitely. What's your favorite digital activation you've seen this year?
So I had to rock this one, the Orange Hoodie campaign. So it's a t-shirt, right? It's too hot for me right now to wear a hoodie. But like, I really love what they did there. Everyone from TJ at Twitter was rocking one. And I think it was really impactful for the WNBA to do that. I was a big fan of what Bud Light did with the home run campaign. So if you tweet the hashtag there after someone hits a home run, potentially being able to win it. And then the MLS Heineken Stadium in a Box. That was so cool. I try not to do that on my Twitter handle, like, engage with this some campaigns because I don't want to show biasness, but like that was awesome. I was nerding out over that.
I was going to say the orange shirts as well. That's been like just amazing to see across everywhere. And I also was going to say the Heineken MLS activation. To give another shout out, I thought the Sharks doing their Zoom calls with mascots at the beginning of COVID was like the best idea to get fans access to the team and do something neat that could be really accessible from home. So being able to just go online and request a mascot to appear in whatever Zoom call you're having, it was something that really inspired our team and has led us down that path. This one isn't entirely digital, but I just saw it yesterday and I just absolutely love it, is the Pittsburgh Pirates. The foul balls as they went out into the stands, if it landed on a season seat holder's seat, they would send that specific ball with a letter from their management saying that while you were out, this happened, and we wanted to make sure that you still felt like a part of the team in the arena. So we're looking forward to having you guys back when the time comes. And I thought that was really special to make people feel like, although they couldn't be there, they were still getting one of the most unique experiences of being a baseball fan. So hopefully we'll be able to start doing that with some of our rogue pucks that are flying out into the stands at Scotiabank Arena soon.
Definitely. That's actually, that's an awesome idea, because it's really, I think it's that extra level of thoughtfulness that really makes like a season ticket holder feel like part of the family, which is how you feel when you're in the arena. But obviously when you're at home, I'm sure people can feel like, oh, why do I pay for this? Why do I have this? So that's definitely awesome. So now moving on to our audience submitted questions. So I guess the first question is for Amir. What is the value of partnership analytic tools for women's sports, and how does this change the game for women's sports?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love the Q&As. Everyone is asking questions to Morgan too. So that's phenomenal. I want to know some of these questions too, answers to these. But as far as for women's sports, I mean, I think it's an absolute no brainer for brands to get into this. We did a recent report for National Women's Soccer League with the Challenge Cup. They generated 1.3 million in media exposure value, which is absolutely phenomenal. And their fan base is just like, it is something I've never seen before. As far as, it reminds me more of like gamer esports fan bases, because they're like celebrating the partnerships. Some of the older demographics, they're usually like, oh, sellout kind of thing if a partner kind of comes in, but they're like, yes, I'm going to drink Bud Light, I'm going to bathe myself in secret deodorant and like all this kind of stuff. It is really cool to see. And I wanted to give like a shout out to so one of the people on our team is Nikki Scott, and this was when I was actually just starting to work with the WiST crew, and I went to this conference at Georgetown, and she was asking a question about women's sports left and right, and I was like, kind of dodged. I mean, these are all really tough questions, but she came up to me after, and she was like, you know, Amir, I want to join Zoomph, and I want to make an impact on women's sports, and I want, you know, like, that is what I'm going to do with you. And I was just like, I wanted to hire her on the spot, but I was like, come at least check out our team first and make sure we're a right fit for you. But you know, she wrote that report with a bunch of people on her team, and so it was a really great passion project for her. So it's just amazing to see with the opportunity she was able to take it and make a reality out of her of what she wanted to do. I know I kind of diverged back to another topic, but women's sports, it's amazing. I mean, it's Sabrina. Like, I don't have a jersey, I need one. I don't know to make one that was big enough for me, and that's frustrating too. A lot of women's sports stuff, you know, for men, they don't have any sizes in any way to show support. I know they constantly run out, at least with the U.S. women's soccer, but all the analytics, whatever we can do to justify and show and validate, sometimes that's needed to be done outside of just pure sentiment. But it's good for business. I mean, it's not just for a feel-good story; it's good for business.
Yeah, and I think Alexis Ohanian said that when, you know, the news came out about the LA national women's soccer team. I just pulled up his tweet. He said, investing in women's sports isn't just good for society, it's damn good business. Save this tweet, check the receipts in a decade. And I think that, you know, people can always say, okay, women's sports, you know, they don't pull in the same revenue as men's sports, but, you know, you need to invest in a sport. And I think some great things that have come out of digital campaigns during this pandemic, you know, the fact that women's soccer was the first sport to return, besides for golf or like that, that was awesome to see. And I hope to continue to see more interest as over the next few years. So one of our live submitted questions, apologize, I was muted. Morgan, how has your stellar analytics background helped position you in your role?
Yeah, it's funny, when we were just meeting the other day, and Amir said that he sort of got into social media before there even was really analytics in the space, and you just started paying attention and poking around. I had a very similar sort of journey, and, you know, started out in understanding how Twitter analytics worked before there even was Twitter analytics for business. You used to export everything into an Excel and manually go through and look at, you know, how tweets engagements were performing and what that might mean for, you know, a paid campaign before that even was a thing either. But coming from a background like that, I think it helps you translate and understand how all the different stakeholders interact and where their priorities might be in terms of what objectives they're trying to set. There isn't a day that goes by where a strategy person on a partnership team isn't having conversations with our business intelligence team. We're constantly trying to figure out how to report numbers that may be super complex in the mind of an analyst over to a sponsorship professional who probably doesn't speak the same language and probably doesn't understand, you know, all the intricacies and the data and you know, the stats behind the numbers that we're sharing over. So it's really important to be that bridge between the two and understanding how you even need to turn data into someone who might be more creative minded, how to influence the design of a post to make sure that it's meeting and it's exceeding your objectives. So I think it really lends itself to being sort of that conduit between a whole bunch of different people and understanding all the different languages that are spoken and being able to just understand the way that the analytics are being presented versus having to sit there and make sense of it and learn it all on the spot constantly has been a huge advantage point for a number of different people that work on our team.
Definitely. And being able to, I think it's ever more important to be able to bridge the gap between, kind of, let's say, front office people who might not understand analytics and technology speak, and then the tech side. And perhaps even being able to do some of the analysis yourself and on the tech side as well, because what we're seeing is it's more important to be able to, communicate in terms of technology and then also in business, because if not, then you're going to have products built in kind of like a vacuum of two teams within your own company. So, this is a pre-submitted question. If you could pick one skill to prep you for your sports career, which would be most beneficial? Networking, coding, analytics, BI. I think it's a hard question because I think it's a mix of everything. But I'm not sure if either of you have any insight on this one.
I'll kind of start if you don't mind. So I think you're absolutely right. I don't think there's one. I think networking is really good, especially in sports. I'm more of a, you're extrovert, introvert. So more of an introvert, but this is easier for me because I got a keyboard and I can talk through this. But so like networking is really tough, but I mean like coding, analytics, all this is huge. But I look at it as like, no matter whatever skill you have, and Morgan's response during the books, like, is a perfect epitome of the best. Like you've got to always be expanding. You've always got to be learning. I've got this quote that we always say to the team. It's like, comfort is the enemy of greatness. And there's all different ways that people say that, but you also always should be putting yourself in a place of learning, a place where you're someone that is not the expert of it. And so that you're always expanding. The interdisciplinary skills all work together and collaborate to make you more rounded. But I would just say, just whatever you don't know that affects your job, start learning more about it until there's a point where you're not there, but you'll never reach there.
Yeah, for me, it would be understanding how people tick and understanding what questions you need to get there, understanding how people might bias their responses, and really looking for the key codes that teach you how you can create things that are going to ultimately lead to your objectives. So it can be on any platform. All those things that you listed with coding and networking and stuff, all of them come down to understanding the fan, the experience, what's really motivating people, and what's at the core of the emotion or the behavior that they're experiencing. So, across the board, just being able to sort of keep that sense of curiosity and research going, it extends into understanding the people around you and managing yourself both as a professional and how to interact with the stakeholders that you need to get things by, the fans that you're working with, the team, the front office. Everything comes down to being able to know what tools you have and how to use them in the appropriate places to understand exactly what's going on around you.
Definitely. And I think we had another question about, what skills are most important when hiring in sports tech, and if someone had experience, would you consider that a detriment in another space? From what I've heard from both of you guys, it's that, even if you have experience, the fact that you're learning new technologies, you're continuing to learn, that doesn't make you, that's not a detriment, because if anything, you're able to build all these new things on top of everything you know from your previous job. If maybe you go in saying that, hey, everything I know is enough to get me here, and you're not taking that master class, you're not reading new things, you're not listening to podcasts and immersing yourself in new technologies, then perhaps it might be a detriment. But if anything, I feel like, at least from my role, what I've seen is a wide array of experiences and knowing a lot about, or knowing enough about a lot of things, and then knowing how to Google when you don't know enough. As I say, like, Google's my best friend. And I think for anyone who's interested in coding, like, I go to Stack Overflow a lot. I read a lot of Medium articles just about different machine learning technologies. And I would say, like, for me, that's the most important thing. So knowing what you know and then knowing what you don't know.
Yeah, we have a manifesto on our global partnerships team across the board, and it can be summed up to the final line of what's next. And that's the thing that we just encourage anyone who's joining our team to think about: what's next for our fans, what's next for our partners, what's next for you, what's next. You know, it's just this mentality of always looking forward and never being comfortable with that status quo. And that's what leads you to greatness, when everyone's always thinking in that exact same way. So I'd 100% agree with all of that.
Awesome. And so I guess we have probably time for two more questions, or one more question, but there's two more interesting ones. So Morgan, would it be possible to speak to some of the hurdles you face as a female working in sports tech? It's a male dominant space, and I know Amir pointed out a really good point earlier. That's just in meetings, when people turn to the male, that might be kind of even lower on the totem pole, potentially. Not that it really matters than you, but they seek their opinion. So it would be great to hear, and if you have any advice for our participants.
Yeah, I have a bit of a built-in advantage, especially in these times, in that my name comes across as quite male. And I'd say that in the past, I would have gotten frustrated when someone responds to an email, flips my names. They always assume that they're in the wrong order, things like that. But I've learned it's kind of an advantage, because you have an even playing field. Either someone thinks the name is pretty gender neutral, or they mistake it until they come forward. So that bias kind of disappears. But there's definitely hurdles. I think we've come a long way since we were even 5 years ago. But you know, we're going through an act right now of looking at diversity and inclusion and what that means for our team across every sort of background. And a lot of these things are being identified as challenges for females, things like golf courses and that sort of inherent idea around sales, when, you know, deals are done on a golf course is constantly what you sort of hear in our world. But yet often females are not invited to the golf course, or they're not invited to be in the NFL pool, or they're not invited because they're just assumed to not be interested in things like that. So we're asking ourselves 3 questions on everything that we're planning. It's who's here and why, who's not here and why, and who would be uncomfortable if they were here. And so if there's any of those answers that ever say that females are not here and they would be uncomfortable being here, it can't happen anymore. Those meetings shouldn't be set up. Those golf dates shouldn't be going down. That NFL pool shouldn't be going forward. So it's a lot of change definitely at the time, and it's all in a good place, I'd say. And not too often do I find that, you know, a male opinion is asked over mine in a lot of situations, which is a great path forward, because that wasn't always the case. But it's just being able to make sure that you have a spot at the table, being present, and that everyone respects you across the board. We're definitely doing some work on making sure that we're setting up quotas and within our company, because we're definitely not seeing the female leadership ratios at the top that we want to see. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what that looks like. It's definitely a challenge just internally at MLSE to find female leadership to look up to. But as you mentioned, the last dance, something that I've been thinking a lot about within our team is the different styles of leadership and value behind the way that females often lead differently than males. You know, if we talk about Michael Jordan, we spent a lot of time looking at Scottie Pippen and his role in leadership of being a different player on that team. And, you know, if you're looking at it in the same way, it's not the same sense of just one style of leadership that we used to always value. It's understanding, you know, there are differences to the way that a female may lead a team and how those might benefit as well. So a lot of research, a lot of commitments across the board, and understanding, and just eye-opening moments in the last couple of months. But it's definitely really a space to keep an eye on, because I think we've got commitments across the board to just change things and make it a more fair and equitable space for females at our company.
Definitely. And I love that, who's here and why, who's not here and why, and who would be uncomfortable. And we'll send out a recap just of some things discussed during this webinar, but I think that was, you know, that's a great thing to think about. Even my parents during Corona, they're like, you should, you know, try and take up golf because it's really good for business. Mm-hmm. But it's like, you know, I would assume, you know, it's, even if I take it up and I'm not that good, there might be a male who's not that good, but he's invited to the golf course. And it's a very interesting thing, because it's like, even if we do everything to try and ensure we can play golf, will we even be considered? You know, I love fantasy football. What if if we don't have a fantasy football league in my group or in our office, but if we did, would the female even be invited? Because it might be assumed that she's just not interested. So that's really helpful advice. I would love to thank both of you for attending today. This was an awesome webinar. It was amazing to have Amir and Morgan with us today, and we're really lucky to have an awesome male ally and new board member at WiST in Amir, and just
Thank you.
A+ job as our first male ally on the webinar.
Thank you. Honored to be here. And Morgan, that entire, everything you just said was amazing. I don't know if it helps at all. You know, for you, Sydney, I don't play golf. I suck at golf. I'm a short, chubby Persian dude. But I mean, there's, you know, kudos to everyone on this. Like, I was going through the attendees list, tons of dudes on there. That's awesome, right? I'm just one of, you know, many here to support and as an ally. Tons of women here. I mean, like what you all are doing in a male-dominated industry. Kudos to you. It's 10 times harder for you to be here. So like, probably more than that, but just all the congratulations go to you guys.
And just to finish, I guess we'll take without Lydia an audience. I meant a picture of our panelists that we can post on our social channels. So if you guys could both smile, and then hopefully we'll see all of you at our next webinar. This is, I said, if I picked up one skill in 2020, it's Zoom screenshots. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.